August 25th, Sherman moved 6 of his 7 infantry corps from their position to move south and destroy Hood's supply line once and for all. General Hood does not realize that Sherman is sending most of his army and sends Lieutenant General William J. Hardee and S.D. Lee with only 2 corps to stop the Union troops. They are vastly outnumbered. 2,200 Confederates are lost compared to only 172 Union soldiers. The next day, Sherman sends the Army of the Tennessee forward to crush the Confederate forces making a stand in Jonesborough. Combined with a frontal assault by General Jefferson C. Davis, the Confederate forces are pushed back. Despite all of this, Sherman is still unable to defeat Hardee's steadfast forces. Amongst those looking at the ruins of war, as displayed on the blood-soaked battlefield, is the 101st Indiana. Organized in Wabash and mustered on September 7, 1862, this infantry has already seen battles such as Chickamauga, Resaca, New Hope Church, and now Jonesborough. They have witnessed more than their fair share of bloodshed. Private Levi P. Fodrea of the 101st.
The vision that was so deeply impressed upon our minds as we gazed upon the fallen will never be erased as long as we have our reason.
On the Confederate side, Watkins witnesses a death during breakfast.
We were sopping gravy out with some cold cornbread when Captain W.C. Flournoy of the Martin Guards hallooed out, "Look out, Sam! Look, look!" I just turned my head, and in turning, the cannonball knocked my hat off, and striking Lieutenant Whitaker full in the side of the head, carried away the whole of the skull part, leaving only the face. His brains fell in the plate from which we were sopping, and his head fell into my lap, deluging my face and clothes with his blood.
Even though escape seems impossible for the Confederates, they slip away at night. General Hood must admit defeat. With their supply line cut and their army dwindling, the Confederates evacuate Atlanta and destroy the Atlanta munitions depot, as well as an 80-car munitions train, to keep them from Union hands. Sherman and his men can hear the explosions as far down as the depot of Rough and Ready. On September 2nd, General Slocum's 20th Corps rides into Atlanta and accepts the city's surrender to Union forces. General Sherman receives the news via a note by Slocum, who rode into Atlanta unopposed.
As the news spread to the army, the shouts that arose from our men, the wild hallooing, and glorious laughter, were to us a full recompense for the labor and toils and hardships through which we had passed in the previous 3 months.
Sherman and his men arrive on September 7th to occupy Atlanta. He orders an evacuation of all families and civilians.
The use of Atlanta for warlike purposes is inconsistent with its character as a home for families.
With Atlanta captured and the Confederacy's valuable supply line cut, re-election is almost certain for President Lincoln. On November 8th, President Lincoln wins re-election with 55% of the total votes. The Union's defeat of the Confederacy in Atlanta deals a blow to Southern morale and restores confidence in a Union victory in the Civil War. But the war still rages on. After dealing with further entanglements with Hood's armies, Sherman begins a psychological attack. First, 30% of Atlanta is set afire by Sherman's men on November 15th, and they pillage everything in sight. Then, with 60,000 soldiers, Sherman begins a 285-mile march to Savannah, Georgia. Living off the land of the Confederacy and burning houses and barns of those staunch Confederates who stood up to them, they arrive at Savannah on December 21st and overtake the undefended city. Sherman's reign of terror then moves through to Charleston, South Carolina. He calls it his March to the Sea. General Johnston, trying to retire to Columbia, South Carolina, is called back into service with hesitation by President Davis, who was under public and political pressure on February 25, 1865. Johnston is reinstated, now in command of the Department of South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida, and the Department of North Carolina and Southern Virginia. Meanwhile, with Sherman's march to the sea accomplished, he moves his men northward through the Carolinas. His goal is to head to Petersburg, Virginia, to join up with Grant and destroy the heart of the Confederacy. Sherman's forces are divided into a left wing, commanded by Major General Henry W. Slocum, and a right wing, under Major General Oliver O. Howard. They push towards Goldsboro, North Carolina. As Slocum's left wing heads towards Goldsboro on March 19th, they face Johnston's entrenched forces, placed to stop the advance 1 mile south of Bentonville. Slocum assumes his forces are facing disparate Confederate cavalry, not a force of 17,000 soldiers. Despite the shock of the attack, Slocum's forces hold on, but their left flank is driven back by the Confederate Army of Tennessee, allowing rebel forces to take over that position and begin an artillery attack on the Union line. By midnight, Union reinforcements arrive, and the Confederate forces are pushed back, entrenching in their original positions. The second day brings light skirmishing as Johnston removes his wounded, and both forces prepare for the inevitable eruption of violence. Union forces are now swelled to nearly 60,000, while the Confederates are only 21,900 strong. During the fight on March 21st, Union Major General Joseph A. Mower requests a reconnaissance mission with 2 brigades, but instead strikes on the Confederate left flank. Aiming for the guarded Mill Creek Bridge, Mower hopes to eliminate the Confederates' only avenue of retreat. General Sherman.
General Mower, ever rash, broke through the rebel lines on his extreme left flank and was pushing straight for Bentonville and the bridge across Mill Creek. I ordered him back to connect with his own corps, and, lest the enemy should concentrate on him, ordered the whole rebel line to be engaged with a strong skirmish fire. I think I made a mistake there, and should rapidly have followed Mower's lead with the whole of the right wing, which would have brought on a general battle, and it could not have resulted otherwise than successfully to us, by reason of our vastly superior numbers.
Pulled back a mere mile from the bridge by Sherman, Johnston and his staff are allowed to retreat on foot that night. Burning the Mill Creek Bridge behind them, Johnston is outmatched and well aware that he can do no more than just annoy Sherman.
At night, all the wounded that could bear transportation had been removed, so that we had no object for remaining in a position made very hazardous by the stream behind us, rendered unfordable by recent rain.
But the fighting is slated to end. On April 9th, 1865, after Virginia falls to Union forces, General Lee surrenders the Confederacy at the courthouse in Appomattox, Virginia. 2 days later, news reaches Sherman, and on April 14th, he receives a letter under the flag of truce by General Johnston.
The results of the recent campaign in Virginia have changed the relative military condition of the belligerents. I am therefore induced to address you, in this form, the inquiry whether, in order to stop the further effusion of blood and devastation of property, you are willing to make a temporary suspension of active operations and to communicate to Lieutenant General Grant, commanding the armies of the United States, the request that he will take like action in regard to other armies, the object being to permit the civil authorities to enter into the needful arrangements to terminate the existing war.
A delay by federal officers keeps Sherman's reply from reaching Johnston until the 16th. The two generals are to meet halfway to negotiate a peace between their forces at the home on the Bennett farm. When alone, behind closed doors, and without other witnesses, Sherman reveals a telegram to his long-running adversary. President Abraham Lincoln, on April 14th, was assassinated by the bullet of deranged actor John Wilkes Booth. The president, having successfully been re-elected to office, died the next day. He will never see the peace and reunification he had so long strived for. On April 18th, Sherman drafts their agreement, which covers the surrender and amnesty of Confederate soldiers in the South. The terms are rejected by the federal government for recognizing the Confederacy as a governing body, and General Grant is sent to Raleigh to relieve Sherman of command and enforce a treaty more in line with Lee's earlier surrender that only recognizes the Army itself. They meet again on April 26th, with Johnston directly disobeying Jefferson Davis's orders to join up with him, and the peace is signed by Johnston and General Schofield, whose taking over departmental command relieves Sherman of the political burden, and approval by Grant allows the peace to officially begin.
I made this convention to spare the blood of this gallant little army, to prevent further sufferings of our people by the devastation and ruin inevitable from the marches of invading armies, and to avoid the crime of waging a hopeless war.
The terms allow for Confederate troops to receive transportation home, a chance to keep 1/7 of their arms, and amnesty for their role in the war. In all, 89,270 Confederate soldiers in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida lay down their arms. It is the largest surrender of the Civil War. The Civil War is officially over. Perhaps it is best put by Sherman himself.
Young men think war is all glory. It is all hell.
The United States will struggle to reunite itself from the bloodiest battle in its short history. This new beginning could not have happened this way if not for the Union victory in the battle for Atlanta.
Thanks for watching. If you'd like to help us produce more compelling historical content like this, please like, comment below, and share this video with fellow history buffs. And of course, be sure to subscribe to help keep history happening.